hello to everybody joining. We'll start up in a minute. But you can't do both. You can't do both at the same time. So your comments are scrolling across the bottom and you can't read the comments, and it's ridiculous because people are reacting to what we're discussing and you can't do anything with it. So you have to keep
Uh,
another platform open in order
huh.
to do anything. So that's kind of Substack in a nutshell, you know. And then what are you going to do, right?
Right.
So I'll give a few minutes for everybody to get on. There's Harriet and old ye bald head. I've seen him around. So we're both in Illinois. You're out west.
I'm out west in Washington State.
We're all under supposedly a bomb
Bomb
cyclone
cyclone. Yeah, that's what you guys get.
and getting nothing from it. I mean, we got a quarter inch of snow and that was it. So
They had tornadoes down near us yesterday, so it was
did they?
Wow.
an eventful day. I wasn't here. I was actually on the East Coast yesterday, but just south of us, had pretty serious tornado damage. So it was 73 degrees at the
Whoa.
high yesterday, and it's in the 20s today. So pretty significant weather changes.
Well, at least you got back before the crap hit out there because it got rough. What I understand on the East Coast or the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah, we timed it. We timed it just perfectly.
So I'll jump into this and let you guys go ahead and I'll let you introduce yourself and what you talk about because you'll do a lot better job than I do. So go ahead. And,
Bill, you want to start?
Sure. So my name is Bill Kirst. I've actually had the pleasure of working with both these guys. I run a Substack called Everword that sort of spun out of my first collection of poetry, and it's kind of been the place where I can write freely, and I sort of span the world of corporate and creative, and never comfortable in either. But I've had the opportunity to be Chris's first podcast guest last year on his podcast, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And I've done a number of these roundtables with Joe. So great to be here right before that thing we call New Year's that I don't really care anything about. Chris, over to you.
Yeah. So I'm Chris Tidrick. I am. I guess I started on Substack with a Substack writing Substack called Think Feel Lead, which talks about how emotional intelligence kind of combines with strategic thinking in the area of leadership. Also started, I guess, about a year and a half ago, started a podcast called Candid Conversations on Leadership, which is I co-host that with a colleague of mine. I work at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And she and I started this leadership podcast, which is now in its second season. And then last January, I launched a podcast called Illuminate. That's Illuminate with an MEN in the middle, which the tagline of that one is stories of men with good hearts, open minds, and a desire to make the world better. And that's the one where Bill was my inaugural guest last January, and that's been going. We're in season 2 on that, and really been pleased with how that's been going.
That's the one I've read, and I've got a script here that I will tell you that I will promptly ignore and throw out the window as soon as we get into this. So which just seems to be the case with everything that I do. I cannot follow a script. So I did read some of I went in there and read some this morning because I like to be informed about what I'm going to talk about. Although these turn into more, and I'll tell you, this one will turn out to be the same roundtable, which will be a little bit wacky, a little bit crazy at the end of it. But there's something I did wanted to discuss. You know, you write about, I think we all write about some of the same things. We all touch, you know, the same topic in ways. And masculinity, since we got a bunch of men in the room, we'll talk about that because that's a great topic, right? And I know you write about masculinity and belonging and friendship. The one I was reading about today was about friendship and men turning towards each other, which is a it's a problem in our society. And I don't think it's just American society. I think it's society, Western and Eastern. Men don't deal with men the same way that women deal with women or women deal with men. We deal with each other on a very superficial basis. And our conversations generally are around very superficial things. And, I was kind of thinking when I was upstairs eating while ago, I think that the majority of my conversations with men are about what the last sale at Home Depot was, or what sport team's doing great,
Yeah.
and there's really no engagement, and it's it's a lot more difficult for men to form genuine relationships than it is women, and I to the extent that I think men get offended by how close women are with their girlfriends, and they're offended by the relationships their girls have with other, or their wives or their respective wives have with other people. When it's really what they're mad about is they don't have that kind of relationship with anybody in their lives, and it's a generational thing. It's a social thing. Um, I wanted to go through a couple things and ask you, because I wanted your take on it live rather than reading it, although I did read it. You quoted Prince by saying vulnerability gives strength structure. And I wanted you to walk me through that the way you understand that.
Yeah, I think the way Prince Robertson, who was one of my guests on Illuminate, what he really meant by that was it you can only be strong if you can admit your weakness, right? And you can only and being able to express a weakness to another man in your life and have him engage in that in a non-judgmental way and help you through it, help you maybe work through that challenge in a way that doesn't demean you, doesn't they I think a lot of times when we express vulnerability to other men, they don't know what to do with it, and so they make fun of it, they demean it, and that's not what you need, right? You need another guy just to say, hey, I've been there too.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually creates strength inside you, because you go, okay, I'm not alone in this. Somebody else kind of knows what I'm going through. It's not the end of the world for me. I just said something out loud that people could use against me, and the person across from me didn't use it against me. And that helps me go, okay, I'm going to be fine here. It helps me be more confident in that weakness, and that it's not the end of the world for me. And that helps me be stronger. That's the way I interpret what he was saying. He might have a little bit of a different take on that.
Well, I was curious
Yeah,
how you thought about it, because I think there is, when you get down to more in that article, there is a difference between performing vulnerability and being vulnerable. And I think men are very good at performing vulnerability
Mm.
in
What do you mean? What do
certain
you
areas.
What do you mean by that? Like, give an example of that. Help me understand
Um,
that a little better.
I think men are good at acting wounded, at acting like they understand, at acting like they, especially again when you're talking about relationships. I think men are very good at performing the understanding of the problem without actually
Mm.
trying to understand the problem or the issue.
Yeah.
And especially when you get into marriages, or you get into relationships, or you get into even relationships with your guy friends, you pretend you understand. But really, what you're doing is you're armoring yourself up and giving yourself a little bit of standoff at distance, like, because you're telling yourself a story, and you're trying to, and I've, going back through my life and some of the events, I know that I've done that. I've told myself a story within myself to not feel what the other person was feeling, because what they're feeling is uncomfortable for me, and I don't want
Mhm.
to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And to me, that's performing vulnerability because you'll say the words, you'll say like, "Man, I've been there. Dude, I've," and it seems like it's always that language, like dude or man or buddy or
Yeah.
pal, and it's always that language that precedes that. I've been there, and I understand what you're going through, and blah blah blah, and and it generally turns into a crap show, and nothing gets accomplished, and um, so that's what I mean when I say performing vulnerability, because I think there are times when we have male friends or guy friends that get close to wanting to be that way, and then our reaction in that performance, because we can feel inauthentic people. You don't have to say something. I've had guests on here that I know are full of crap. You know, they can say the right words, they can say everything they want to, but I know in my heart that what they're telling me they don't believe, because there's just no emotion, there's no inflection, there's no passion in what
Yeah.
they're saying. And I think we sense that. I can't put a finger on it. I wouldn't call them out and say, I know you're lying, but I'd say, I understand that you're not telling me something that you honestly believe. And when we do that with other guys or we do that with our friends, it puts them off and it scares them back from that ledge where they want to break down or they want to tell you something true or they want to be vulnerable or they want to say, I'm hurting. So, um,
I hear you. I think and I'm sure Bill has something to chime in here on this, but it's harder to accept vulnerability than it is to be vulnerable, like as a
yeah,
guy, because it requires you to open yourself up and expose that sensitivity in yourself, and maybe what your friend is sharing with you, cracks something in you, and you're trying to be strong for your friend, but in fact it's better if you open yourself up to your friend rather than kind of being that stoic strong rock for them in that moment.
yeah, I understand. And I'll let you speak, Bill, but I don't know that it's easier. I don't know that it's easier. I
Yeah.
think it's hard. I think it's harder in a lot of instances for a man to react to vulnerability than being vulnerable. And, coming from, Bill's got I don't know, do you have a military background?
I don't. I know Bill
Okay.
does.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there was plenty of time guys broke down in the military and they were being generally vulnerable. And these are 20-year-old, these dudes are badasses. I served with some badass guys, but I sat there and watched them cry because they missed their mother, they missed their kids, or they missed their mom. And um, to sit there and watch a grown man cry and not be able to get down there, it's kind of it's almost kind of pathetic in a way. I'd be willing to pick up a gun and defend this guy, but I couldn't get down in the hole and cry with the guy. And so I think it's a little bit harder sometimes to be the recipient rather than
Yeah,
the giver.
that's I think that's what I was trying to say. Like
Okay.
I remember there as a colleague of mine, a really good friend of mine. We were at a work event where it was a tribute to a colleague of ours who had passed from COVID. And in the middle of it, he broke down. Like, and we were in a group of people, and like I had never seen him break down, like ever. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I just had no, all I could do was like put my hand on his shoulder. But I knew I had this like moment of, if I really get down there with him, I will be a sobbing mess too, and this whole thing
Mhm.
will just go to hell. But really, maybe that's what he needed in that moment is for me to be there with him, and But it's hard. I think you're right. It's absolutely hard to do that.
Yeah. MJ said, because I can read on those, he said it goes against virtually everything we're taught to be as men, that vulnerability equals weakness. And in a corporate structure, to go over there and hug the guy and cry with the guy and say, I'm hurting too, makes you almost a pariah in that community because
Yeah,
what they value is the stoicism and the strength
yeah.
and the fake part of it, that we're all holding it all together, when the truth is none of us are holding it together. And we're just faking it. And the one guy in the entire room that's actually showing his entire feelings and hurting is the one guy that we're alienating and trying to pressure back into the performance aspect of it. Like we've got all our crap together. And go ahead, Bill. I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on what you both have been kind of unpacking here. There's two things that kind of come to mind. Like you had talked about, Joe, around I think you said buffering, like sort of
Mhm.
we do this buffering with language. And the thing that I just immediately was curious about was, we say things like, "Hey, buddy, you got it. Hey, pal, I'm here for you." We do all this stuff, like you said, that sort of puts almost like a gauze between the real feeling and where we're standing. And I'm just curious from the standpoint. I don't know if other people know this, but I'm going to probably do a little research later on. Um, what is the vernacular that other people use in other languages and other cultures? Like, is it the equivalent? Is there the equivalent in other languages and other cultures where they do the "Hey, buddy," "Hey, pal," "Hey," that sort of, um, and again, it's not an armoring up, but it's a buffering, right? There's a buffering that goes before we're allowed to really get in the hole and collapse with them. And the other piece that you were talking about, Chris, that made me think of this is it harder to be the reactor, the receiver, because that means you now have to hold up two containers, right? You're holding up the container of the person in this moment of vulnerability, and then you're holding back the dam that or you fear will break in you. So you're doing twice the work in a way, maybe not, depending on how you look at it. And given the option, I think a lot of people would prefer not to do that, because once the dam breaks, you can't undo it.
No, I agree. I agree. It's one of those things we need to deal with as men, as that, um, and we need to teach our children and especially our sons that there's a better way to do these things, and that breaking down doesn't make you weak. And I go back to a moment I talked about. I think you were on that live, Bill, where I was in the military. My grandmother died, and they set me down in a room, and I said, "Give me 10 minutes," and I cried for 10 minutes, and then I went back to boot camp, and I finished my military career, and that's not grieving. And now I'm going through, 3 years after my father died, I'm still grieving.
Mhm.
And we just, not again, I'm not going to mention names, but we just had a friend that lost somebody, and now I can empathize and I can relate to the absolute hell that this guy's going through, and
Yeah.
I want to sit down, with him and say, I do understand, and if you want to call me and just cry, I'll sit there and cry with you. It doesn't make me less of a man. It doesn't make you less of a man. Sometimes that's what we got to do is we just got to wail and scream and curse and throw things and get through this. And it's not going to be a 30-minute thing. And especially Western society, like you say, in a work, you have a colleague that you work with for years that dies. And then the next day, everybody's like, okay, we got to get back to work. Well, how do I do that? How do I do that and not strip something from myself? Because I am still grieving, and that was a friend of mine. And it's not apparent, but I am still suffering from that. And we expect just to pick up and go on with our lives. And it's almost like we package grief and allot you a time slot, and so you're allowed to grieve for the next 30 minutes of this memorial. And then, we got to get back to quarterly reports and everything else. And it's a bunch of crap. Um, it just doesn't work. Um, the other thing I wanted to talk about, because it was interesting, is your triangulation,
Mm.
because that's absolutely truthful. I don't say there's many absolute truths in this world, but I find that to be absolutely truthful. And I already hit on it a little bit, so go ahead and speak to that.
Yeah, so that was a concept that Jason Lang, who was I think guest number 7 or 8 on the first season of Illuminate, brought to me. I'd never. It made complete sense to me the second he mentioned it, but I had never heard it articulated that way. And it's this idea that men don't connect with each other; they connect over objects. So it's sports, it's cars, it's hunting, it's whatever it might be, that object that we talk about, we connect through, as it's this deflective mechanism So we don't have to connect with each other. We don't have to be real with each other. You know, I've talked a lot on threads and recently about the connection with my son, who's now 23. He's an adult. He's out there, has his own job, you know, fully launched into the world after college. And he and I never connected over sports growing up. Like, and I'm a huge sports fan, and it was always a disappointment for me that we didn't connect over sports. And now he is a sports fan, and we connect like crazy. We watch NFL games together. We go to NBA games together, and but if I really am honest with that, it's joyful for me, but it's not super real connection, right? We're not having deep conversations while we're watching those games. It is a way for us to spend time together, and that's important. But there is this aspect of something is missing there, that we're still just having conversations about the thing and not having conversations about ourselves. And that's the whole idea of triangulation, is there always has to be that third point in the connection, else the connection fails.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't realize it until somebody says it. Then it becomes like this is profound right here, and I recognize that in my own life because you start looking at your circle of friends, and you know it's I've got my NASCAR friends, and I got my baseball friends, and I got my hunting. I don't hunt, but I'm just using groups, and I
Yeah.
don't go to NASCAR anymore. But um, you've got these pockets of friends, and they all exist in these little buckets, and your buckets don't even cross most of the time because um, your only real bond with that human being is the activity or the event, and you know on Daytona weekend, yeah, you're best buddies, but throughout the week, neither one of you's calling to check on each other.
Yeah.
Neither one of you cares. They don't. I mean, let's just be honest. They don't care if you're okay. They don't care if they're okay. And it's I start thinking, is there a way to use that as to a bridge to something deeper? But I think there may be, but I don't know that there is because you're forming your entire personality and that entire connection on that superficial.
And it's okay. Like, I think
Yeah,
it's not to say that that connection isn't real and isn't valuable in your life, right? I think we have, if you look at concentric circles of connection, like the people in the center are the people that are like just our truest friends and family that we are deeply connected to. And as the concentric circles go out, that level of connection is less deep, but it's still connection. And I think that the way of sort of knowing where somebody lives in that set of concentric circles is to ask, okay, we go to basketball games all the time together. If we were to take basketball out of the world, would that connection still exist? Right. And if it does, then maybe they're closer to the center of those concentric circles. If it doesn't, then they're at level 2, 3, or 4. And that's fine. You just know what the value of it is there. And
yeah. That to me though. I would say that's an acquaintance and not a friend because I'm a little bit different than that. I think I have very few friends in this world. I have a lot of
yeah,
acquaintances,
yeah,
and that's my language. But
yeah.
um,
I think it's depth of connection, right? Whether it's friend, acquaintance, stranger, to me it's depth of connection.
and and I take my lumps in this because I've gone through all this, and we all go through this. We grow up and we get older, but I think the first time a guy texted me or called me and said, "Hey, dude, are you okay?" And you know, my mom asked me if I'm okay. Why are you asking me if I'm okay?
Yeah,
What's the deal here?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you automatically jump into that suspicion, and oh, this is weird. And when that person's being genuinely caring and they mean it, but it works on both sides, and we have to fight it both ways as men because that gets into the deeper part of it is when you get into vulnerability, or like we were talking about earlier, which is becoming one of the words I hate bringing up because I think it's been in today's world, a lot of people abuse that word, but um, for a man to stand up in this day and age and say help,
Mm.
I think it's a crime. And we talk about, one of my big things is veteran suicide. The fact that so many men they can't even reach out to their wives and say help. I'm suffering, because they're so caught up in that strength and so caught up in that I'm the foundation of the family, that for them to say I need help, or I need aid, or I need somebody to call me, or I need something, that they can't dig themselves out of that role. Um,
Yeah, I was actually talking to another friend of mine, and he and I have like really dug into this idea of masculinity and gone back and forth. And he has a job where he deals with people like across the political spectrum. And he was saying that like on one side of the political spectrum, which we are not on, um, the idea of vulnerability is just it's poison. It's like men are supposed to be the rock. They are not supposed to impose their emotions on others. They are, and that's just part of who they are, right? There's nothing that's going to convince them otherwise. And so I keep saying, I keep mentioning to him, like, then they are selling themselves short, right? They are denying themselves real connection, because I don't believe that there is real connection in our lives without vulnerability. Like, vulnerability is the thing that connects us. I'm also a big believer that sort of shared suffering is a great connector, right? But if you don't ask for help, like you're saying, Joe, like, help is a signal that you are suffering. When you say help me, you have a challenge, you are suffering. It allows somebody to come in and connect with you in a real way, like in an absolutely real way. Um, and as I was actually just having this conversation with my mother the other day. She's like, "Oh, I don't want to be in imposition." She's 80 years old and like needs a lot of assistance or anything. She's like, "Well, I don't want to be in imposition." It's like, don't you realize that by asking someone to help you, you are giving them the opportunity to contribute to your life, right? That's it's not weakness. It's you're actually giving them a gift in some ways, and I think it's really hard for guys to understand that.
yeah, and yeah, I think guys as a whole, I think people as a whole need to realize, and I talk about this a lot, is when you hit upon something that makes you uncomfortable, there's a reason that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And I'm scrolling through one day, and I started watching Brene Brown, and I'm watching this thing, and this was years back, and I'm hideously uncomfortable during this whole thing. And I got through, and I said, why am I so uncomfortable with what she's saying? And then I realized, it's obviously because I have trouble with these things, and I have trouble admitting, you know, not only admitting that I have a problem, but I have trouble on the other side, because when somebody admits some vulnerability to me, the masculine instinct, and what you were saying about the strength, that's both cultural, it's religious, and we can't deny that. That comes from some of the religious teachings, that the man is the rock, he's the foundation of the family, and he doesn't waver, and which is not what anything says. It's just the image that's been better. But our immediate instinct is, I got to fix this. I'm the
yeah,
repair man, and I've got to fix this. And I think, I don't think, I know, for the women, for the mothers and the wives and the daughters, they don't want you to fix it. You can't fix it. There are things you cannot fix. You can't go get WD-40 and duct tape, and I'm being a little facetious, but you can't run out to the garage and fix your daughter's broken heart. You can't repair a relationship with the tools you got in your Craftsman toolbox. You can't you They're just things you don't fix. You just sit there and you open up and you be vulnerable with, or listen to them. And when I say listen, I mean, listen to what they're saying. And that is a skill that we have lost as a society, is listening, is actually being able to sit in somebody else's misery without trying to escape it or try to fix it. Because I don't know how many times I've actually said something to somebody and they said, "Well, you know what you need to do?" I didn't ask you what I needed to do. I don't want to know what you want me to do
Yeah.
because I'm not you and you're not me. I didn't ask you to give me a solution to the problem. Just shut up and let me talk for a minute. And if we don't have that connection, then we'll go. You know, typically what happens, I clam up and I just deal with it myself, which I am an expert at that because I've been doing that, my entire life. So, Jason's story. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a fantastic video on YouTube that I quote all the time. It's called "It's Not About the Nail," and the very short version of this. And everyone go look at Google "It's Not About the Nail" on YouTube, and it's a man and a woman sitting on a couch, and she is sitting there complaining about headaches. And she literally has like a spike in the middle of her forehead. It's obviously not real. These are actors. Um,
Yeah.
and all he wants to do is take the nail out. Right. And all she wants to do is for him to listen to her talk about her headaches. Right.
Hmm.
And it's intended to be humorous. But to me, it has always struck me as really poignant about that need for us as men to listen to the women in our lives, to listen to the men in our lives, that most people, when they're going through challenges, they just need somebody there and present with them. They don't need solutions.
Absolutely. And I'll let Bill get into this one because I want to bring this one up because it was part of it. Because it was out of Jason's story that men men want belonging and purpose. And the odd thing is we want voice that we want belonging and purpose. We expect everybody to know that we want belonging and purpose. And as much as we would like to believe so, when you feel neither belonging or purpose in a relationship, in a job, in anything, you are open to manipulation. And um, I'll let you speak to that, Bill, and I want
Yeah.
to know what you think about that because that's one of the things that really hit me in that article.
I'll go a level further. I think we yearn for it. I think we yearn for belonging. I think we yearn for purpose. Um, and I agree with you, Joe. In the absence of those things, we will turn to anything that feels like that, right? Nefarious or otherwise. If it gives us that dopamine hit,
Mm-hmm.
we will go towards it. And I think instead what we are kind of called to do is really understand what's at the source of the yearning, right? It goes back to what you were saying, the wound or the vulnerability, right? Like sit with the hurt. And these are things that we've not been taught to do, right? Introspection, no, not so much. Let's look outward, right? Um, as you were both talking and giving anecdotes and stories, the thing that kept coming to me was like, go for a walk, go for a long walk, or we all have these people in our lives where if you go for a long drive with a friend, right? You think about those people in your mind, like, oh, you know, I'm going to call up Chris. I just need to go on a long drive, and we're going to talk in that container of a vehicle. And then, chances are, in that vehicle, in that long drive, you're going to get deep because it's in this container, right? But as soon as you get out of the car, it's like, hey, great talk, right? And we go back to our ways. Um, or we maybe we'll go for a long walk after Thanksgiving with a friend or a cousin or whatever, and we'll talk deep. But at the end of it, we get to that liminal space where we're like, okay, this was great, and now I want to pretend I didn't put any of it out there. It's at that space, I think that uncomfortable space where we need to literally stop and say, hey, I'm feeling this, you're feeling this. Let's not like push through it. Maybe we put a pin in it and say, let's come back to it, but let's not ignore it. Let's not push through it. Let's not pretend it didn't happen. Because if you do, this is my experience, all you do is turn that yearning way back up. And it's your heart starts to hurt in a way. that you can't make sense of the world again, and then you go back to old habits. I think we need to create new habits here. And I think, Chris, you're doing it, right? You're doing it by talking to men. You're doing it by listening deeply. Joe, you're doing it by talking to men, by listening deeply. It has to be modeled. We didn't see this growing up. We don't see this in the political forum for sure. And it's easier to demonize than to recognize, in my opinion. Or I should say it's the lazy route to demonize versus recognize. Because to recognize, you'd have to admit you're feeling it too. That's where I tend to want to go, and I understand that's why I look up and there's not a lot of people around me, and that's okay.
I think it's easy to demonize. I think it's also very easy to distract.
Yeah.
And we're very good at that, not only with ourselves, but with other people. They come and they say, I need help with this. Well, let's go do this and get your mind off of it. Let's go do this and get your mind off of it. Or let's go play golf, or let's go play tennis, or let's go to a strip club, or let's do whatever we got to do to not think about your problem. And this is, I think, probably the central tenet of everything I write is, and I brought this up yesterday, is I've gotten to where I love being uncomfortable. And I like to sit in these uncomfortable questions. And sometimes the more miserable you can make the question for me, the more I like sitting in it, because I like the question. And we need to allow each other space to sit in that question and listen and let them work themselves through it, because we will work ourselves through it if we're allowed that space to work through that question, instead of being distracted, or instead of being demonized, or instead of being putting the time on it. I think sometimes the best thing we can do for each other is don't try to solve it. Sit there and ask questions. How do you feel? How does this make you feel? What do you think about this? Let them find their own way. And it's like I wrote in a piece a while ago, and I'm not claiming I'm a genius. I never do. It's like sometimes the best thing you can do is hold a match up for somebody and say, I can show you a little bit, but I can't lead you out of this hell. I can show you a step on the path, but I can't lead you away from this. And I can't get you out of your grief. I can't get you out of your misery. I can't get you out of whatever you're in, but I can be here and I can hold your hand and I can shine a little light here and there, and we can get out of this together. But you're going to have to take the steps. And that's not an AA meeting thing. It's not a self-help thing. It's just reality, and it's allowing them to space to sit in that question and be uncomfortable, and to know there's somebody there that's not going to judge them for that. Like you said, that's not going to demonize them for that, or just run away, because that's probably the worst thing we can do is, you come over to your buddy's house and he's miserable and you say, well, I'll just come back later, because then you're all alone. And that's why we have 22 veterans a day killing themselves, because they can't reach out to somebody and say, I need help.
Yeah, the thing that sort of resonates with me in what you're saying, Joe, is this idea that when we jump to solution, when someone comes to us with a challenge that they're going through, is we have automatically set a new expectation for them that they may not be able to fulfill, right? If we say, oh, I know how you can fix that. I know how you can get through this. And that's not the solution that will actually work for them. You've given them another thing to fail at. And most men that I know, when they are challenged in life, when they are struggling in life, they feel like failures, because there's this expectation that you don't fail. And like that's the real danger in trying to come up with a solution, rather than just helping them through what they're going through, being there, getting down in that, at their level, and sort of saying, okay, it's more of a coaching approach than it is a mentor approach. If I sort of speak in leadership language, like the coach will go in there and just ask they will listen, will ask the right questions and help them discover the answer within themselves, rather than just giving them the answer that may not be the right answer for them.
Yeah, I I absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree with the language you use and the demeanor in which you approach somebody. And like I said, not telling someone, because you can't tell somebody how to get through grief. You can't tell, I don't care how good you are with words. I don't care how brilliant a writer you are. You can't tell someone how to get through a private grief. And the failure thing hits because I think the big secret in this universe is we all feel like failures multiple times a year. You know, I have felt like failures with my kids. I felt like failures with my family. I felt like failures with my friend. I feel like a failure probably 3 or 4 times a day. I know I fail at things, and we have problems saying that. We
Yeah.
have problems getting up saying, you know what, I yelled at my kid yesterday, and I feel like a friggin' failure for it. And really, it's not a big deal. But once you say that in your head, you're building that narrative. So, again, I think one of the things I don't detest many human beings on this earth, and I'm not going to say a name, but one of them that was very influential was spouting off about how empathy is not a real thing, and I think that is the most garbage statement I have ever heard.
It's not just garbage, it's absolutely dangerous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a supposedly intelligent human being ever utter that empathy is not a real word. Empathy is absolutely the most necessary emotion or that we have to get through this life and form valuable and lasting relationships and connections with the people around us. If you don't have empathy, you can't have connection. You can't have, I don't care what you say, you can't have connection with your wife, you can't have a connection with your kids, you can't have a connection with anything if you don't have empathy. You know, the rest of it, we can work on. But if you can't form that little bit of a, whatever it is, I don't it's just an idiotic statement. And you're right, it's dangerous.
And I think that's the thing, that empathy is the thing that allows you to receive vulnerability from somebody else. Like, if you don't have empathy, you don't know what to do with that.
And we're right back to what I was talking about earlier. And I think what the crux of everything I do is you're talking to somebody that thinks they have all the answers. And there's no more dangerous a person on this earth than somebody that thinks they have all the answers. Um, and I'm not saying this is a political philosophy, and I'm not getting into politics. I'm saying, I know I offend people sometimes when I say it, when I write it. You don't know, and I know you don't know because none of us know. And if you think you've got life figured out, if you think you've got this whole game figured out, if you think you've got it figured out from A to Z, you're full of crap. And I don't mind calling you full of crap because the one thing I do know is that we don't know. You know, we
Yeah,
just
that reminds me. It goes back to something you mentioned, Brene Brown, earlier, and I've talked kind of at length about Brene Brown and her impact on my entire approach to life. And after seeing The Power of Vulnerability TED talk that she gave, and then uh, like, I'm blanking on the name of her the first book, but anyway, her first book, huge impact on my life, and it came at a time when I had just gone through a leadership program, and at the end of this leadership program, we were put in groups of 5, and they said, go around the table and give somebody feedback. You've known each other for a year, you've gone through this program together, give them feedback on how they could improve. And one of the women in our cohort looks at me like right across the table, and she said, "You are so good at everything you do, you're intimidating." And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm intimidating. I don't intend it. Like, I have no goal of being intimidating. Like, I'm this like skinny nerdy kid from high school that has been insecure my entire life about, like, I'm not like, where is this coming from? Like, I couldn't understand it. And I read or heard Brene Brown talk about vulnerability immediately after getting that piece of feedback. And it all just clicked for me. What was happening was, when I was insecure, when I knew I didn't know something, I was bringing false confidence into the equation all the time because I never wanted to admit I didn't know. And that was frankly making me a jerk, right? It was making me arrogant because everyone thought that I thought I was good at every single thing. And since then, like that just opened something in me and it allows me now to create space for other people in my life to contribute to my life and to contribute to the common things we're working on because I can say, I suck at that. I need your help.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I'll give you a turn here a second, Bill, but that reminded me of something because in my previous profession, I wore a suit every day. And, I was, I worked out and I'm in shape and, I got a military presence and I got the same thing. People, somebody told me one day, she said, you're very intimidating. And I'm thinking, me, I'm the most harmless guy in the world. I'm just, I'm not intimidating. But I realized, and I started asking questions to people, and they're like, yeah, I mean, everywhere you go, you're like a bodyguard. You're like, you're not, even if you're having fun, you're like the security guard at the event. Because I learned from my family, and my dad was in law enforcement. He was ex-military, but he was a very ramrod straight, all the time showing decorum and wouldn't cross his legs in public. He would, he's basically standing at attention everywhere he goes. And I got the same way. I learned that from him. So, when I came back, I would stand there and I'm watching the crowd. And I do. I look like Kevin Costner in Bodyguard. Whitney's out there doing her thing, and I'm over in the corner like, you know, just checking out everything and trying to make sure there's no threats anywhere. And I realized, man, uh, you need to fix this. But yeah, there's that assumption that because you're acting that way, that you've got it all together. And the honest thing in that room was, I'm the only one that can't figure out what's going on. Everybody else is having the time of their life, and I'm the guy standing in the corner. Like I don't really know how to have fun here. Everybody else is cutting loose and being an idiot, and I'm the only one that feels like one.
Mm.
So I know exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
it. Talking about you and your dad just made me like sit up straighter in my chair. Like it's like like it's that subliminal.
Me too. I
Anyway,
bring up my dad, and I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm like, am I sitting
yeah,
right in my chair?
yeah.
And um,
yeah.
you know,
The two things I really appreciate. I mean, it's making me laugh because it's so true, right? And that's the other thing. Truth is humor. Many times, right? We sit here and we're like, oh my gosh, this is so me. The hypervigilance, like Joe, you and I have bonded on that, right? If we think about our strengths, but also, you know, overused, become a little bit of like a saboteur. They're two descriptors that I think about. We've all taken those strength finders things. Chris, I know you've taken those with teams a million
Yeah.
and a half times. And I remember a very succinct moment where we were asked to share our top three strengths and, rotate around the room, telling people in different cohorts. And the number one skill, strength finder skill for, a dozen plus years has never changed for me. And it's always been empathy. And I remember sharing it with a group of people. And one of the people in that cohort, their first response was, I'm so sorry. I was like, what? What do you mean you're so sorry?
Oh, oh,
And they said, oh, that's got to be so difficult. That means you're literally feeling all of the sensations and feelings of other people all the time. That has to be exhausting. And the person next to them said, and I heard that makes you weak. And the next person sort of piled on that. And I remember this moment of, wow, they have it all wrong. Right. And I said to them, it's a superpower for me, folks. They said, it is a superpower. I said, I can come into this room and I can know that gentleman right there had a flat tire on his way to work. That gentleman right there, his daughter is suffering and had her heart broken. This woman right here is struggling. Like, and I don't know how I know that, but I know that. And they're like, really? That's like Avengers stuff. That's like Marvel stuff. And I said, yeah, exactly. And then on the flip side of that, to the hypervigilance, like you talk about, Joe, that's a saboteur. That's a saboteur of mine. A lot of people come to me and say the same thing they've said to you, Chris, and to you, Joe, is, you know, you are so focused, hyper focused and hyper vigilant that nobody knows how to approach you. and you're detail oriented, and they call me Hawkeye, and you know, I'm the guy that catches the grammar and the punctuation, the typos. I think those are good things, right? It makes us better, but boy, does it make me unapproachable. And you're right. I'm the guy standing in the corner. I can't sit with my back to an exit. Like, cannot do that. And I'm trying to work on that. But this is life, and we're trying to do it. We're trying to, lean into these vulnerabilities. And honestly, talking about it is the first step. So I think it's interesting. Empathy and hypervigilance are two of mine that I carry around.
Yeah.
But it's good to laugh about it.
I learned. I made a note of that. You're right because I do. I don't. I won't sit with my back to a door in a restaurant. And I was sitting there thinking about it one day. I go into a Subway to get something to eat, and I'm nervous because I can't find a table that faces the door.
I'll leave. I'll find another
Yeah,
place.
and I sat there and I said, "Man, quit being an idiot. What's the statistical possibility of a terrorist coming through the subway while I'm sitting here? You don't have to do this anymore." But it is, it's a little thing in and of itself. But when you put it in the larger picture, and then you realize how everybody else, not that I always care what people are thinking about me, but you realize how everybody else in that room is looking at you thinking, actually, you're the guy coming off as the terrorist because you're the one standing there with your eyes moving everywhere and you're the nervous one and you're making everybody else
Yep.
nervous because you're the guy trying to figure out, the tactical situation in a subway in, nowhere USA. So, um, yeah, it made me think of something else. I don't know why it made me think about it, but it was one of the. We'll get into something else. We'll get into something lighter here to kick this off because it's the end of the year. But the being truthful in friendships because we were talking about bonding. One of my best relationships in the military. One of my guy that he grew to be a great friend. I mean, we were really good friends. But when he moved in, we had quads, and for those that don't know, you had quads, which is basically a group of 4 apartments. When I lived in Italy, and there's 2 guys in each unit, so there's 8 guys in a quad. And we got this new guy in, and by then I don't know, I was E5, E6 maybe. And he just came in. He was a kid, but he was he was everything I wasn't because I was from the rural South, right? He was a skateboarder, and he was loud, he was brash, and he was kind of obnoxious. And he came and went for 6 months and would walk in his door, and we'd see each other because we had a common area with a TV, right? And I'd sit there and watch him come in. And one day he stopped me, he turned around, and he said, Petty Officer Nichols. And I said, yeah. And he said, I've been here for 6 months and you don't speak to me. And he said, I was wondering why. And I said, because I don't like you. And he turned around and went in his room. And we didn't speak for 6 more months. And then one day at a party, he came up and started talking. And I don't know why that kicked off the relationship, but just him sharing that story 6 months later and saying, this is how that made me feel. And it wasn't one of those male bonding moments, but he was being very truthful about how it made him feel.
Mm.
And I was talking, I realized, how stupid a thing for me to say and arrogant and after that, I mean, we were great friends. And it's odd because he's from California. We come from 2 totally different worlds as far as like I don't know why that story you told me jogged my memory, but um for the next few minutes, y'all got a few minutes, or are you in a hurry?
I'm good.
All good. All good.
We'll do what the roundtable started off because I started the year off with kind of a game show format. We're going to end it with a game show format because that's fun, right? Um, so we're about to walk into 2026. I don't do these year-end things. I don't, I already spoke my piece about that, but I'll ask people, um, let's have some just good questions for the year end so we can have some fun recollections of 2025. Um, give me one moment this year when you felt really, really alive, and I don't mean inspired or peaceful. I mean actually alive.
Ooh.
Chris, you go first.
I'm going to say it was the moment, and it's a moment at the very, very end of 2024, leading right into the beginning of 2025. But when oops, my hold on one second. The when I put a call out on Threads for guests for this Illuminate podcast, that I had this crazy idea of starting this podcast. And I put a call out and said, if you're a man with a good heart and an open mind and a desire to make the world better, I want to talk to you and tell your story. And within 72 hours, I had 100 guys that had signed up to be guests on that podcast. And I'm slowly working through that whole list. That made me feel like you are supposed to do this. And that just made me feel alive. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Bill.
Gosh, I mean, it's harder to beat the concept of knowing that your words are in the world. And when I get a snapshot of like a picture of my book in a place like Ukraine, I you can't really get over that feeling of like words you put in the world that found their way to a part of the world where people are reading um and taking in something that you've created. Um it's a pretty incredible feeling. And it tells you to keep going. Always keep going. Your words matter, your creativity matters, um and those always take me by surprise and make me feel like it was all worth it. So keep going.
I'm gonna do a superficial one. Because mine was mine. I'm not going to do three writing ones because that's boring, right? So I'll do something else. Before I got rid of my car, I had a Hellcat that I was going to keep.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. I had a Challenger Hellcat or a Charger Hellcat,
Yeah.
and I said I'm going to go see what this thing will do. So I went up north of Chicago about an hour. And if you're familiar between Chicago and uh, Wisconsin, there's nothing. There's farmland. So I went about an hour and I turned around and I got off the X ramp and I just floored it. And I said, just once in my life, I'm gonna hold something till it tops out. Um, I did not make it, but I got to about 170, which is an idiotic thing to do. But what you also know is when you get on a bridge, they have those little rises, right? I was changing lanes when I hit one, and all four tires came off the ground. And instead of doing one lane, I did four lanes. This is the definition of stupidity. Don't tell everybody to do this because this is the very definition of idiocy. I'm old enough to not do stupid crap like this, but I went from lane two to the wall and just barely missed the wall. But for like 30 seconds, I was Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible and in every racing movie you've ever seen. I mean, there was like 30 seconds where I was like, this is what life is supposed to be right before I snuff it out. Because that's how close I came. But, that was that, and then I came and got rid of it. So, that was my.
I won't be getting in a car with Joe anytime soon.
I won't do it again. Look, man, I got a story come out tomorrow about I went to a racing event once, and they let me drive a Ferrari 430.
Now that I would do.
Oh,
on a track.
Well,
that I would do.
I wrote out everything, but I got in there, and the instructor got in, and he said, let's take it easy, okay? And I'm like, you don't know who you're in the car with, buddy, because I don't do easy. I'm going to drive for Ferrari probably once in my life. I'm going to own this thing one way or the other by the time it's over. And I'm just one of those guys. I'm just that. I know I'm that guy. If I get in the car, I assume the personality of Lewis Hamilton, and I honestly believe that I am him, and that this car was made for me to exploit to its full potential, right? And the laws of physics and the world be damned, I'm going to take it right to the edge, and I did. Which explains a lot about me. So, round two, would you rather, right? Because I hadn't done that since I was a teenager. Right? Would you rather know you're doing something right or be uncertain but growing? I think everybody here would say uncertain but growing, right? Because
Uncertain but
Absolutely.
growing.
we're
Yeah.
not going to say
Yep.
in public otherwise, right? Um, would you rather feel everything for one full year or feel fine for 10 years?
Oof.
Oh,
I'm going to go with feel everything for a year because I don't really think I'm that far away from that right now, and it's pretty awesome.
wow.
Okay. What would you?
I would go for it too. I would go for the same.
It's
Because that's
it's
what I'm
great
striving
writing.
for.
It's great writing material, if nothing else.
Yeah,
You know.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah. It puts you on the verge of tears almost all the time, but it's you know,
yeah, I'm not going to talk about that because this is the one podcast a year that I'm not going to tear up. I've made myself a commitment that this is the one this year that I'm not going to tear up. Um, so would you rather build something alone that succeeds or build something with others that fails?
Others and fails.
oh man, I really like success. It's
Here's the honesty part of the conversation right here.
yeah. I think if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would absolutely said build something alone that succeeds. But I lead a team of 37 people now, and it's just amazing, like what we can do together, even if when we're not successful.
Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that question. Um, I too I'm in love with success. So I get even if nobody knows I succeeded, I I get a little thrill off of it. And I mean anything. I can build in a piece of IKEA furniture and get it right together and not have leftover parts, and I feel like I've mastered the universe. I mean, I'm for 10 minutes I'm on a high. So I don't know. Um, the other one, because of this conversation, I won't ask it because I know it. Um, all right, what did you do in 2025 that you're not sorry about, but probably should be?
Oh,
You know I'm gonna make you think.
Mm.
I'm gonna say so. I'm really active on Threads, and despite swearing multiple times that I was going to stay out of politics, I did not, and I probably called some people idiots
We
far
have
too
bonded.
often.
We have bonded right now, right this very moment. We have bonded because I am the
So
same way.
because I really don't believe that calling people names solves anything, but
It does.
it feels so damn good in the
It
moment.
does. It really does. I swore I would get on. I fought Threads forever, and I said I'm gonna get on Threads to see what it's about, and it's a cesspool, and um, and I
I
mean
love
that.
it. Yeah,
I,
I actually don't think it's successful. I really love it. I love the community there. But
let me finish. Let me
yeah,
finish.
yeah.
It's a cesspool because I've trained my algorithm to feed me
Oh yeah,
by doing exactly what you tell. I get on there and for that brief 20-second high when you're just being brutal to somebody, um, and it's wrong, and I know it's wrong, and I don't like doing it. So, but I also know that's my weakness. That you know,
yeah,
um, I don't know why I feel the instinctive need to correct injustice in the universe through social media.
yeah.
But if somebody presents a fact that I know is wrong, I feel like it's my moral duty to correct it in the most brutal sense possible. And I'm trying to train myself out of that. So go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think for me, I turned down I turned down way too many invitations to get together, and I was way too. I just want to stay in tonight. And honestly, I regret that. I'm sorry that a lot of people invited me to their birthday parties and dinners, and I was like, no, if we're not going to come, I'm not feeling it. Um, I think this next year needs to be more about like accepting those invites and being with people.
All right. Um, Something you're doing in 2026 that people will think is stupid. I'll give you mine. I already know what mine is.
Oh yeah.
I'm
Go
going to
for
be
it.
I'm going to be in a demolition derby this year. I have always wanted to be in a demolition derby.
What does that look like? You're driving it?
I have no, yeah, you drive the cars, you smash them into each other.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do that. I don't know why I want to do it, but I want to do it. And I made up my mind this year. I am going to find out how I can participate in one. I think it's the most idiotic thing in the world. It's destructive. It's wasteful. It's stupid. There's no real point to it. But I'm man enough to admit that I like doing stupid stuff. And um, God knows I've done some stupid things that I was required to do. I might as well do some that I want to do on my own.
This may sound cynical, and I don't intend it to be cynical, but my goal in 2026 is to find the goodness in people.
And you think that's other people think that's stupid?
And I think other people are going to say that's stupid because they think that humanity is so far gone it's impossible.
So I break out demolition derby, and you break out trying to get some people.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Different strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna. I think I'm just gonna stop striving. I'm just done trying and striving and trying to go for that whatever next thing is. And there may be some people that are like, dude, you're top of your game. Like, aim for the fences. But I don't know. I it may be stupid, but I think I'm gonna just put things in cruise control for a while.
All right.
Trust the
Someone,
universe.
someone you're done explaining yourself to.
Ooh.
I think this one for me is I crossed a transom. So I think this past year I reached that with my father. We'll see if it holds.
Okay. I'll
Anyone
give you a
who
second. Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
I'll answer mine to give you a chance to. With me, it's everybody. Because I caught myself. I went back. I said yesterday I went back and read all my writing, and I'd write, and then after I wrote, I tried to explain why, and it really doesn't matter why. It just matters that this is, and and I'm just done explaining why I do the things. I don't need to. It's my life. I suffer the repercussions. I suffer the consequences. I don't need to explain myself to anybody. And I think I've done that my entire life. If you read that you know before the BS, if you caught that this morning, that's kind of the feeling I have now. Is I'm that feeling of being forced gratitude. I'm if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat, and I don't need to explain why I'm going to eat. And if I want something, I'm going to go get it, and I don't need to explain why I'm going to go get it. I want it, you know. So that's mine.
I think mine is I'm not going to explain myself to people anymore that question me when I insist that there is a middle left to be found.
Which is, I think, a lot in line with what I'm not. Yeah. There's always a middle. There's always
Yeah.
another question. As, we talked on that. Number 3, a truth you're tired of not saying.
A truth I'm tired of not saying.
What?
I'm a writer.
That's a good one.
Oh, God, I speak my truth. That's really hard to. That's really hard to. I don't. What am I holding back and hiding? Um, I don't think I have an answer to that. Like I don't think that I'm
You can think
holding.
about it and
Yeah,
and write
yeah,
about it later because it'll come to
yeah,
you because it's out
yeah,
there.
yeah. I'm sure there is.
Um,
I just nothing's coming to me right now.
all right, and something you're starting, even though you know that you will fail.
I just started it today. I worked out for the first time in like 2 months, and I'm convinced I'm going to do it every day for the entire year of 2026. And I guarantee you that won't happen. But I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try to get as many in as I can. But I
Well,
know that it has been a constant failure in my life is staying in like tip top shape.
I think for me, it's picking back up an instrument, putting fingers to the keyboard, piano, whatever. There will be some bad notes, and I don't care. It's just fingers on the ivory. I think it will be worth it.
you took mine because I've tried. I've sworn every year for the past 10 years I was going to learn the guitar,
Oh,
and I've got a nice guitar that has decorated my office for 10 years, and I know three chords.
This
So
is
if you,
pro- this is
hmm,
probably not the time for me to tell you that I had a similar guitar and I sold it last year.
that's about thing. I know I'm never gonna, because I have that again, this vision, and this is the type of personality I am. If I'm going to play the guitar, then I want to sing, and you do not want to hear me sing. Um,
Hmm.
it's truly terrible. But I assume the personality of whoever I'm singing, and you know, I'm from the South, so I like country music. Um, but there was a great song I heard in a movie last night that if I could sing, I would sing it, but I don't want to hurt anybody.
so the next round table, you're saying we're going to hear your rendition of Purple Rain? Is that right?
No, no. If that, I tell you what, if you could make that happen, that would be my highest viewed real or live ever. And it wouldn't be because of the quality of the performance. It would be, I would go viral. I guarantee I'd go viral,
Yeah,
but it would not be in a, it would not be in a good way. Drive was the name of that song from. I watched F1 the movie last night.
great movie.
Did you like
The
that
song
movie?
"Drive" by the song "Drive" by Ed Sheeran, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Great
that
great
movie.
was a
song. Probably one of the best driving songs I've ever come across.
that
Yeah,
I,
was an unexpectedly great movie.
really good
really,
movie.
y'all like that movie?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I liked it a lot.
I had a hard time getting into it.
I liked it so much that I tried to watch an actual F1 race the week after I watched it and realized this is boring as sin.
It
So
it will still probably be better than Tom Cruise redoing
yeah,
Days of Thunder because
I'm not unaware of racing. My son became a NASCAR fan when he was 3 years old, and it lasted until he was about 10. So I've watched a lot of NASCAR races.
well, I used to get into it. I mean, I love, and when I was over in Europe, I got into rally racing because those guys are insane. Um,
yeah.
how you can do 150 on a gravel road, I will never figure out. Um,
The trees on both sides, like it's crazy.
there's people standing 3 feet from them. They're standing inside the road, and this car comes by doing 150, hitting you with gravel, and I'm standing there saying, "You guys are insane." I
Yeah,
wouldn't. I'd be behind a tree or something substantial, but I love I love the racing part of it. I love the cars, but we've all survived 2025. This is my last live of this year. I look forward to seeing more of your stuff, Chris. I mean, I really enjoyed the subject. And now that I've talked to you, I can no longer write on the subject because I feel like I'll be stealing your thunder. So I have to go find a new something to write about.
We all have our own perspectives. So right away.
I do my I do my thing, and
Yeah.
um, Bill does his, and I think that's the best thing about the group. And I've made some friends on Substack this year that I'm very happy about. It's odd because you we're talking about male bonding, and really we haven't bonded over writing because we really didn't talk a lot about writing in this, but I think that's I think it's a very important subject, and I think all of us need to write about it more because um, we need to examine the depth of why we do the things we do. So we'll keep pushing forward, and I hope you guys have a great beginning of the year, and everybody's watching. I hope you have a great time, and we'll kick off the roundtable next year in true form. And I'm trying to get a bigger format where we can do like 8 or 10 guys at the same time. So that should be fun.
Oh,
Thanks
fantastic!
for your
It's
time.
been amazing being on today, and thanks for the invite.
We'll have you back sometime because we have a lot of fun with these.
Okay,
All right,
fantastic.
all right. You guys have a great day.
You too.
Take it
Bye,
easy.
everybody.
Cheers.